My dad's ex called my dead mom a whore. Now he wants me to live with her. My dad's girlfriend once called my dead mother a whore to my face when I was 12 years old. Now 7 years later, he wants me to welcome her into our home, to live with her, to be a family with her and her kids, to babysit for her like we're one big happy blended household. So I moved out. Packed my stuff, said goodbye, and moved in with my maternal grandparents, the people who loved my mom, who would never disrespect her memory by forcing me to live with someone who spit on it. My dad says it feels like I'm punishing him, that there was never any rush to leave, that we could make it work if I just tried. But here's the thing, I've already tried, twice. And both times, Claire made it clear exactly who she is and what she thinks of my family. So no, Dad, I'm not coming home. Because the woman living in my house isn't just your girlfriend. She's the woman who called my mom a whore, and I'll never forgive that. My dad and Claire have history, a lot of history, the kind that keeps circling back no matter how many times it should have ended. They first dated when I was 6 or 7. My parents had separated temporarily, as it turned out. And during that separation, my dad started seeing Claire. I barely remember that period. I was too young to understand what was happening, just knew that Dad had a new friend who came around sometimes. Then my parents got back together, worked things out, and Claire disappeared. For a while, life was normal, or as normal as it could be. My parents were together, I had both of them, we were a family. Then my mom died, I was 12, old enough to understand what death meant, old enough to feel the massive, gaping hole her absence left, too young to know how to process any of it. And 6 months later, Claire was back, not as a casual thing, not as Dad slowly dating again after an appropriate mourning period. She was just there, like she'd been waiting. Like the second my mom was out of the picture, she could slide back in. They dated for 2 years, 2 years of me trying to navigate being a grieving teenager while my dad's girlfriend acted like she had some claim to our family. And it wasn't just me who had problems with her. My paternal grandparents, my dad's own parents, couldn't stand her. My aunt and uncle, my dad's siblings, actively avoided family events when she was there. Everyone in my dad's family saw something about Claire that made them deeply uncomfortable. But my dad, he was in love, or infatuated, or just desperate not to be alone, so he ignored all of it. Claire had kids from a previous relationship, 2 of them. And from the moment she got serious with my dad, she had expectations, not hopes. Not wishes, expectations. She expected me to babysit, because we were going to be a family, and that's what families do, right? They help each other out. Never mind that I was a grieving 13-year-old who barely knew this woman. Never mind that her kids weren't my siblings. Never mind that I never agreed to any of this. She just assumed. Because she was dating my dad, I was now her built-in childcare. And when I pushed back, when I said I had my own life, my own friends, my own plans, she got upset. Made comments about how I was difficult and uncooperative. My dad tried to mediate, told her she couldn't expect me to be a babysitter, told her I was still dealing with losing my mom. But he never really took my side. Never drew a hard line, just tried to smooth things over and keep everyone happy, which meant I ended up doing some babysitting anyway. Because it was just this once, or just for an hour, or it would really help me out. But the babysitting wasn't even the worst part. The worst part was what she said about my mom. See, when my dad and Claire dated the first time, back when I was 6, my mom was also dating someone because they were separated, because that's what happens when marriages end. People move on, they try to rebuild their lives. My mom met someone, started dating. It didn't work out, and eventually she and my dad reconciled. Pretty standard stuff. But Claire called my mom a whore for it, a whore. For dating someone while separated from her husband. She said it to me, to my face. When I was 13 years old and still raw from losing my mother. Called the woman who raised me, who loved me, who died when I was 12, a whore. And here's the part that made my blood boil. My dad had also been dating during that separation. He was dating Claire during that separation. But somehow my mom was the whore, not him, just her. I asked Claire point blank, If Mom was a whore for dating during the separation, what does that make my dad? She didn't have an answer, just sputtered and deflected and acted like I was being disrespectful. But she never took it back, never apologized, never acknowledged that what she said was cruel and unfair and fundamentally wrong. She just expected me to get over it. To live with it, to accept her as part of my family despite her calling my dead mother a whore. It all came to a head one night when I was 14. Claire was over for dinner, again. She was there constantly by that point, acting like she lived with us even though she technically didn't. And she started in on me about something, I don't even remember what. Maybe homework, maybe chores, maybe the fact that I didn't want to babysit her kids that weekend. But she was talking to me like she had authority, like she was my parent, and something in me snapped. I looked at her and said, "You're not my mother, you'll never be my mother, and I will never treat you or your children as my family, so get the fuck out of my business." The room went silent. My dad looked shocked. Claire looked like I'd slapped her, and I just sat there, shaking because I'd finally said what I'd been holding in for 2 years. Claire started crying. Not the angry crying, the hurt, genuine crying that makes you feel like the bad guy even when you're not. My dad sent me to my room, told me I'd crossed a line, that I couldn't talk to her like that. But later that night he came to my room and said something I didn't expect. "She can't try to parent you. You're right, she's not your mother. We don't even know each other that well." I thought that meant he understood, that he'd finally chosen me over trying to force this blended family fantasy. A few weeks later, he and Claire broke up. And I thought, finally, it's over, I can breathe again. For 5 years, she was gone, out of our lives. My dad dated other people casually, nothing serious. We had our routines, our relationship healed. It was just me and him, and that was enough. Until 11 weeks ago, I found out by accident, by overhearing something I wasn't supposed to hear. My dad was on the phone in the other room. I wasn't trying to eavesdrop. I was just walking past. But I heard her name, Claire, and then I heard, "Yeah, once you wrap up the job stuff and figure out the kids' school situation, we can make the move happen." My stomach dropped. The move, as in moving into our house. I stood there frozen, listening to my dad plan a future that included the woman who'd called my dead mother a whore, the woman who'd expected me to babysit her kids, the woman who everyone in our family hated. And he hadn't told me, hadn't asked. Hadn't even warned me, just made the decision and planned to spring it on me once it was already done. When he got off the phone, I confronted him. "Are you getting back with Claire?" He looked guilty, defensive, like a kid caught doing something he knew was wrong. "We've been talking," he said. "Are you moving her in?" Silence. "Dad, are you moving her into our house? We're working on the logistics," he finally said. "She needs to figure some things out first." I didn't even try to hide my reaction. I know I looked disgusted, because I was disgusted. This was the woman who disrespected my mother, who'd made my life hell when I was grieving, who broke up with him specifically because he told her she couldn't parent me. And now he was bringing her back, moving her in. He told me I didn't need to look so disgusted. Like my feelings were the problem, like I was being unreasonable for not wanting to live with someone who'd caused so much pain. I said, "You didn't even tell me." "I was going to," he said weakly. "When, after she was already unpacking?" He didn't have an answer for that. I didn't waste time being angry. Anger wouldn't change anything, so I made calls, first to my maternal grandparents, my mom's parents, who'd been quietly present in my life since she died, who never pushed, never demanded, just loved me and kept her memory alive. "Can I move in with you?" There was a pause, then, "Of course, when?" "Soon." They didn't ask why. They didn't need to. They knew about Claire, they knew what she'd said about their daughter, and they knew that I needed a safe place. Then I called my paternal grandparents, my dad's parents, told them what was happening. My grandmother was furious, not at me, at my dad. "He's doing what? Moving her in? After everything, after what she said about your mother, after how she treated you?" "Yeah." She was quiet for a long moment. Then, "We support whatever you decide to do." That night I started packing, not dramatically. Not in a rage, just methodically, clothes, books, the photos of my mom I kept on my dresser, the things that mattered. My dad came home and saw the boxes. "What are you doing?" "Moving out." "What? Why?" I stopped packing and looked at him. "You're moving Claire in." "We can make this work," he said. "We can be a family." I'm not willing to work on that, I said calmly. I refuse to be Claire's family. I refuse to babysit her kids. I refuse to live in a house with someone who called my mom a whore. That was years ago, and she never apologized. He tried to argue, tried to convince me it would be different this time, but I wasn't budging. You're allowed to be with whoever you want, I told him, but I'm not paying rent toward a household where she lives. I'm not contributing to groceries for her and her kids. I'm not pretending this is okay. Because I had been contributing, I paid a couple of bills every month. Threw in money for groceries. Did my part as an adult living at home, but I wasn't doing that for Claire. I moved in with my maternal grandparents 2 weeks later. It was quieter than I expected, no dramatic fight, no door slamming, just me loading boxes into my car while my dad watched from the porch. He looked sad, lost, but he didn't stop me because he knew, deep down, he knew this was his choice, his decision to prioritize Claire over me, and now I was making mine. Claire and her kids moved in the following week. My dad texted me, "Your room is still here whenever you're ready." I didn't respond. My paternal grandparents invited me to Thanksgiving. "Just us," my grandmother said, "no Claire." My dad spent Thanksgiving with Claire and her kids, the first Thanksgiving we'd ever spent apart. My grandmother told me later that he'd called her, upset that the family was choosing sides. She'd told him, "We're not choosing sides. We're choosing not to spend holidays with someone who disrespected our daughter-in-law's memory." I spent Thanksgiving with both sets of grandparents. They'd coordinated. My mom's parents hosted lunch. My dad's parents came over for dessert. It was nice, peaceful, no tension, no walking on eggshells, no Claire calling my mom a whore. But it also felt wrong, because my dad wasn't there, because this wasn't how it was supposed to be, because I loved him, still do, but I couldn't be around her. My dad keeps texting, "I miss you. Your room is waiting. Please come home." And then the one that made me angry, "It feels like you moved out just to punish me for trying again with Claire." Punish him like this was some vindictive teenage rebellion, like I was throwing a tantrum to get my way, not protecting myself, not setting a boundary, not refusing to live with someone who fundamentally disrespected my family, punishing him. I texted back, "I moved out because I won't live with someone who called my mom a whore. That's not punishment, that's self-preservation." He responded, "She was going through a hard time back then. People say things they don't mean." And I realized he's making excuses for her again. She was going through a hard time, so she gets to call my dead mother a whore, and it's just, excused? What about me going through a hard time? I was 12 when my mom died, 13 when Claire said that. Where was my grace? Where was my allowance to say hurtful things because I was struggling? Oh, right, I didn't get that. When I told Claire to get out of my business, I was crossing a line. But when she called my mom a whore, that's just something people say when they're stressed. The double standard is exhausting, and the worst part is my dad genuinely doesn't see it. He thinks I'm being stubborn, unforgiving, that I should just let it go because it was years ago. But here's what he doesn't understand. It's not about how long ago it was. It's about the fact that she never apologized, never acknowledged that what she said was cruel and wrong. She just expects me to forget, to move on, to welcome her into my home like none of it ever happened. And my dad expects the same. People keep asking me, "Don't you think you're being too harsh? It's been years, people change." And maybe they do. Maybe Claire is a completely different person now. But she hasn't shown me that. She hasn't reached out, hasn't apologized, hasn't acknowledged the hurt she caused. She just moved into my house like she belongs there, like the past doesn't matter. And my dad expects me to come back and play happy family. But here's the thing, I'm 19 years old, legally an adult, old enough to make my own choices about who I have in my life. And I choose not to have Claire in mine, not because I'm being petty, not because I'm trying to punish my dad, but because I have the right to protect myself, to honor my mother's memory, to refuse to live with someone who disrespected the woman who gave me life. My dad says there was never any rush for me to move out, but there was. Because every day he spent planning Claire's move-in was another day I felt unwelcome in my own home. Every conversation they had about logistics, about her job, her kids' schools, Their future together was a reminder that I didn't matter. That my feelings about this were irrelevant. He made his choice. He chose Claire, so I made mine. I chose myself. And I chose my grandparents, the people who loved my mom, who understood why I couldn't do this, who gave me a place to land without judgment or conditions. Living with my maternal grandparents is different, quieter, calmer. There's no tension humming under every conversation. They talk about my mom sometimes, share stories, keep her memory alive in small, gentle ways. My grandmother made my mom's recipe for apple pie last week. Just to feel close to her. We ate it together and she told me about the first time my mom tried to make that pie. How she forgot the sugar and they ate it anyway, laughing the whole time. I never get stories like that at my dad's house, because Claire doesn't want to hear about my mom, and my dad has learned not to bring her up because it makes Claire uncomfortable. So my mom has been slowly erased, piece by piece. Memory by memory, until she's just this abstract concept, someone who existed once but doesn't anymore, and I'm supposed to be okay with that. My paternal grandparents have been checking in constantly. How are you doing? Do you need anything? We're here if you want to talk. They're furious with my dad, my grandmother especially. She told me, I raised him better than this. I raised him to honor his commitments, to protect his family. I don't know what happened. I do. He got lonely. And loneliness made him prioritize his comfort over everything else. Over me, over my mom's memory, over the relationships with his entire family. Because everyone in his family has distanced themselves from Claire, his parents, his siblings, me, but he chose her anyway. I don't know what happens next. My dad keeps saying my room is waiting, that he misses me, that we can work through this. But he won't acknowledge what working through this actually requires, Claire apologizing. Genuinely, for what she said about my mom, and my dad understanding why I can't just forget, why I can't pretend it never happened. Until that happens, there's nothing to work through. I love my dad, I really do. But loving someone doesn't mean sacrificing yourself for their comfort. It doesn't mean living with someone who hurt you just so your parent doesn't have to choose. It doesn't mean dishonoring your mother's memory to make your father's girlfriend happy. My mom died when I was 12, and in the 7 years since, I've had to fight to keep her memory alive, to keep her from being erased, to keep people from pretending she didn't matter. And I won't stop fighting now, not for my dad, not for Claire, not for anyone, because my mom deserves better. And so do I. People keep asking if I'm being too harsh, if I should give my dad another chance, if family is supposed to forgive, and maybe I will, someday. But right now, I'm 19 years old, living with my grandparents, honoring my mother's memory by refusing to let it be trampled. And if that makes me harsh, then I'm okay with that. Because some things are worth being harsh for, and my mom is one of them.